Hi everyone, welcome back to another Lonsdale Public Library's book chat. I'm Penny, and if any of you tuned in last week, you would have heard 2 weeks ago, you would have heard Marguerite's wonderful recommendations for horror books. And I totally devoured all of those. Not. I am not a horror genre person. I want nothing more horrible than, say, running out of coffee in the morning. My children will probably admit that is probably the most horrible thing that could happen to mom as well. And so I want to suggest some books to you this week that are still in the Halloween theme, but are not going to be scary, or at least not as scary. So the first one I want to recommend is called Undead and Unwed by MaryJanice Davidson. And one of the first things I like about this book, it is about vampires. It's about a female vampire. We've talked in the library before about how there just isn't enough variety of vampires. All of the vampires in books seem to be the dark, brooding, gentleman type. There's never older vampires. There's never young vampires, and there's very rarely female vampires. And so this one's actually a lot of fun. Another reason it's fun is because it takes place in Minnesota. In fact, she is bitten by the vampires outside of Khan's Mongolian barbecue in Burnsville. You can't get much more Minnesotan than that. And so the character, Elizabeth Taylor, she reminds me of what Carrie Bradshaw, if anybody had watched that show about 4 women living in the cities, she reminds me of what Carrie Bradshaw would be like if she were a vampire. She loves her designer shoes. It's kind of humorous because she gets sick at the sight of blood. So her as a vampire is very unique. However, the other vampires seem to think that she's going to be a queen. In fact, this is called the Queen Betsy series. There are 20 books in the series, and they're all very humorous. They're lighthearted. They're a lot of fun. So if you're looking for a female vampire book, this would be a great one to check out. The second set of books, this is the second book in the series called Faked to Death. The first one is called Posted to Death. They are by Dean James, who also writes under the name Miranda James. And in these books, the main character, Simon Kirby Jones, is an American who becomes a vampire, ends up moving to England and living in a stereotypical British village called Snupperton Mumsley. And it does play off a lot of English stereotypes, as far as you have your nosy postmistress and stuff like that. He solves mysteries, and he actually earns his living as a writer. He writes, the main character in here does. The main character, Simon, writes romances under the pseudonym of Daphne Deepwood and mysteries under the pseudonym Dorinda Darlington. And so it really is another lighthearted romp. It's a very cozy mystery. He happens to stumble upon some of the solutions. And a neat thing about this book, the vampires in this book, while not out to everybody around them, there is a pill that's been developed on the sly kind of, that allows them to go out in sunlight and allows them to not have to have blood to survive. And so it really is an interesting idea, an interesting concept, and again, very lighthearted. I really enjoyed that one. The third book, I think I've recommended her in a past book chat. The author is Gail Carriger, and the book is called Soulless. And this is a steampunk book, which if you're unfamiliar with steampunk, it's an alternate reality. It takes place usually in the Victorian era, and there's a lot of mechanical and gadgetry stuff. And in this book, it's the Alexia Terabati novel. The series is called The Parasol Protectorate, and it mixes the steampunk with the supernatural. There are vampires and werewolves and such, with British society rules. So for example, I saw a quote when I was researching this, that this book has been described as Buffy the Vampire Slayer meets Jane Austen. And I think that's a fairly accurate quote about it. for example, one of the quotes in it says, "But really, Alexia, it is simply not the done thing to hit a vampire with a parasol or otherwise." It's very proper. However, there are vampires in it. Vampires and the werewolves exist in society. People know of them. And they actually hold a relatively high place in the society. Respected. Most people are wary of them. But this is just the first book in the Parasol Protectorate series. She has also written The Custard Protocol, which takes place after the series. And there is a finishing school, which is the series I believe I had recommended in a former book chat. And again, the vampires in it are very well dressed and very prim and proper. They even host afternoon teas if they're awake by then. Of course, not outside. But this is a really fun series to read as well. And the fourth series has been around for quite a while. This is the second book in the series. This is the Sookie Stackhouse series. The first book in the series is Dead After Dark, or Dead Until Dark, excuse me. This one is Living Dead in Dallas. And it takes place in the United States. Sookie Stackhouse is a waitress with a vampire for a boyfriend. And synthetic blood has been invented so that the vampires do not have to drink blood. Some still do. That's actually a conflict in some of the books in this series. And if you are familiar with the TV show True Blood, it's based on the Sookie Stackhouse novels. However, True Blood was an HBO series, I believe. And it's much more violence and it's much more serious. The books are more light and fluffy. And it has the vampires in it. It has her boss, Sam, who is a shifter, and he shifts into a collie. Pretty unthreatening dog there. And so again, this would be a great series to pick up if you are interested in reading about vampires, because they are fun to read about. But you don't want the snot scared out of you, because that is where I am at. I want to be able to sleep at night. So these are some recommendations that I think that everyone would enjoy. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you in a few weeks.